Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Gaunitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 11, Chapter 5, Text 50. Bhuparashura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Satam Avatirmasya Nirvrityai Yasholoke Vitanyate Bhuparasura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Shatam Avatirmasya Nirvirtyai Yasholoke Vitanyate Bhuparasura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Satam Avatirmasya Nivrityai Yasholoke Vitanyate. Please chant. Bhuparasura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Satam Avatirmasya Nirvirtyai Yasholoke Vitanyate Bhuparasura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Satam Avatirmasya Nivrityai Yasoloke Vitanyate Bhuparasura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Satam Avatirmasya Nirvirtyai Yasoloke Vitanyate Bhuparasura Rajanya Hantave Guptaye Satam Avatirmasya Nivrityai Yasoloke Vitanyate. Thank you very much. So the word for word translation by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Bhupara, who were the burden of the earth. Asura, demons. Rajanya, members of the kingly order. Hartave, in order to kill. Guptaye, for the protection. Satam, of the saintly devotees. Avatirmasya, of him who has descended. Nirvrityai, also for awarding liberation. Yasa, the fame. Loke, throughout the world. Vitanyate, has become spread. And the translation for this text 50 is as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead descended to kill the demoniac kings who were the burden of the earth and to protect the saintly devotees. However, both the demons and the devotees are awarded liberation by the Lord's mercy. Thus, his transcendental fame has spread throughout the universe. And the purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. A doubt may arise as to how the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to this material world, and since he is the omnipotent creator of millions of universes, why do the devotees glorify as wonderful the Lord's activities, such as his killing a witch named Putana by sucking out her life through her breast? Although such activities are certainly beyond the scope of ordinary human beings, why should they be considered wonderful when executed by the omnipotent personality of Godhead? The answer is given in this verse, by the word nirvrityai. The Lord killed the demons not because he was envious of them, but in order to give them spiritual liberation. Thus, the causeless mercy of the personality of Godhead in liberating both the devotees and the demons by his inconceivable pastimes clearly distinguishes the Lord from any other living entity, either man or demigod. It is stated, Mukti pradata sarvasam, Vishnur evana samshaya. Only Vishnu can give liberation beyond birth and death. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has pointed out that generally the demons are awarded impersonal liberation in the Brahmani effulgence, whereas the devotees are given the superior benediction of love of Godhead in the spiritual planets. Thus the Lord exhibits his causeless mercy towards all classes of living entities, and his fame is spread throughout the universe. Because Krishna is transcendental, his fame is not different from his personal incarnation. So as the Lord's fame expands, the entire universe is gradually liberated. These are some of the unique characteristics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadanti Kam Vandeham Shri Guru Jita Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavan Ishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patisanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimataram Padaswami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation of this text 50 once again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead descended to kill the demoniac kings who were the burden of the earth and to protect the saintly devotees. However, both the demons and the devotees are awarded liberation by the Lord's mercy. Thus, his transcendental fame has spread throughout the universe. So the main point in this text is expressed very succinctly by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and this is how he puts it. The Lord appeared to kill the kings who were a burden to the earth, to protect the devotees, and to give pleasure to both by giving sayuja to the demons and prema to the devotees. Thus, the Lord cannot be accused of being biased or hateful. So this leads one to look at cause and effect. So there may be an occurrence which is puzzling, and this may be termed an effect. So we can ask, what is the cause of this puzzling effect? So there may be a puzzling occurrence, for instance. The Lord descends to kill the demoniac kings, and he descends to protect the devotees. However, both the demons and the devotees are awarded liberation. So that's the puzzling effect. So we can examine, just as a starting point, some of the thinking of a demoniac person. So I thought to look at Hiranyakashipu as exemplifying a demoniac person. His main purpose was to disturb the demigods. So he planned first to kill Lord Vishnu, so that with Lord Vishnu dead, the demigods would automatically become weak and die. This was his thinking process. Another of his plans was to disturb the residents of the planet Earth. So the peace and prosperity of the residents of the Earth and the other planets is maintained by the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. So the Brahmana's duty is to cultivate peacefulness, satyam, self-control, dhamma, tolerance, titiksha, cleanliness, socham, and simplicity, arjanam. And then they advise the kings, the Kshatriyas, how to rule the country or planet. So following the instructions of the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas should engage the populace in austerity, sacrifice, Vedic study, and adherence to the rules and regulations established by Vedic principles. So generally, people are inclined to perform sacrifice because they understand that unless sacrifice is offered, there is going to be insufficient rain, and this is going to impact agricultural activities. And Lord Krishna explains it this way. This is from Bhagavad Gita 3:12, where he says, in charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. So that's just getting a picture of how society is functioning, the role of the demigods, the role of humans in relation to the demigods, and how the whole relationship is nurtured by the presence of Brahmanas who are teaching the Brahmanical qualities, and then the role of the Kshatriyas, the kings, because one's taken it that it's a monarchical ruled society, are actually assisting people to follow the process of sacrifice. So this is the kind of ideal society that's functioning, and I'm painting the picture because we're looking at demoniac thinking, and I'm using Hiranyakashipu as an example. So in this kind of setting, Hiranyakashipu expressed his thinking in the following way to his nephews. So this is getting even more insight into how demoniac thinking goes. This is what he says. While I am engaged in the business of killing Lord Vishnu, go down to the planet Earth, which is flourishing due to Brahmanical culture and a Kshatriya government. These people, engaged in austerity and sacrifice, Vedic study, regulative vows, and charity, destroy all the people thus engaged. So it's not sufficient just to execute his particular plan of weakening the demigods, the idea that he can kill Lord Vishnu. It's also destroy all the population that's engaged in Brahmanical culture or following the principles of Brahmanical culture as directed by the Kshatriyas, and destroy them. So that's demoniac thinking. And that comes from the 7th canto in the 2nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So his demoniac intent was to halt the performance of sacrifice, which means people then, without sacrifice, and this is very visible in the society that we live in, people take the necessities of life for pleasing their senses, and they forget the purpose of taking those necessities is to nourish their bodies, but actually the whole focus is self-realization. And they forget that the purpose of taking those necessities is just to keep themselves fit and healthy, moving towards that goal of self-realization. So one can ask the question, what is the cause of this puzzling effect, Hiranyakashipu's kind of thinking? So Hiranyakashipu wanted to avenge the death of his brother at the hands of Lord Vishnu. And his mistaken thinking is seen where he expresses himself further. This is how he expresses himself. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has given up his natural tendency of equality towards the demons and demigods. So notice, it was in this verse, this particular point, that the Lord has a mood of equality towards the demons and the devotees. Thank you. So, and he's actually saying, and he's recognizing this, but he's saying, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has given up his natural tendency of equality towards the demons and the demigods. Although he's the Supreme Person, he's now influenced by Maya. He has assumed the form of a boar to please his devotees, the demigods, just as a restless child leans towards someone. So this is a picture of demoniac thinking. His defective thinking is that Lord Vishnu can become partial, just like a child whose mind isn't steady and they're not like absolutely resolute in their thinking. And this faulty thinking on the part of Hiranyakashipu is that Lord Vishnu can change his mind at any time. So the cause of this thinking is that the demoniac person, being materially subject to learned patterns in the mind, thinks that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also subject to this learned mental pattern. So it means that the mind is vacillating. It could be this or it could be that. One can go from one position to the other position. And also the mind has its particular way of functioning according to what repeated pattern has formed through the course of one's life. So the effect of his being subject to his learned mental patterns is that he says, I shall therefore sever Lord Vishnu's head from his trunk by my trident, and with the profuse blood from his body, I shall please my brother Hiranyaksha, who was so fond of sucking blood. Thus shall I too become peaceful. So this is a picture of demoniac thinking, just taking into account this particular effect that we're seeing of his being so convinced that he can kill Lord Vishnu. It's very much resting on this idea also that Lord Vishnu is very much like him. You know, he's just subject to whatever patterns are in his mind. So right now, he's showing favor to the demigods. He's lost his equal kind of disposition to both demigods and demons. So this kind of thinking, based on the fluctuations in the mind, producing this puzzling effect of seeing the Supreme Lord as mortal, and also subject to becoming conditioned, has its cause explained by Lord Krishna. So this is how Lord Krishna explains how this kind of thinking comes about in the mind of a demoniacally inclined person. This is what Krishna says: "Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be." So that's an explanation for how that thinking arises. It's not knowing that the Lord has a transcendental nature. So that's Bhagavad Gita 9:11. So Srila Vishwanath's translation of this explanation by Lord Krishna, the same verse of 9:11, this is how he puts it, just to put emphasis on one point. "Fools deride me in this human form, not knowing it to be my original spiritual form, pure Brahman, higher than all else." So that transcendental nature means there's a spiritual form, Brahman. And that particular verse, since it's kind of relevant to this discussion, and it's always nice to hear, is "Avajananti ma mudha manusam tanum ashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshvaram." So the puzzling effect of a demon's thinking that the Lord is mortal and subject to learned patterns in the mind is failing to understand that the Supreme Lord is the Lord of all beings, whom he creates. So that's the whole missing component. It's a missing component. So Mama Bhuta Maheshvaram. Of everything that be, I am the supreme proprietor. So he's the Lord of all beings, and he creates those beings. This means that the cause of a demon's thinking is not understanding that the Lord is not different from his supposedly human body. He is his body, so to speak. And his body is spiritual. So that's a part, or Brahman, that's a part that the demons just fail to understand. And Krishna uses the term fool. So the contrasting understanding is that is there with the devotees of the Supreme Lord, as opposed to the demoniac thinking that Vishnu can be killed, thinking of him as an ordinary living being. The devotee has the Lord actually showing his form. That's the whole difference. So an example that's there, I'm just using this example. In the beginning of Satya Yuga, where people were living 100,000 years, Kardama Muni, he attained success in yoga practice. And the Lord, being pleased with him, showed his form to him. So this is the description. So I'm reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, from the 3rd canto, the 21st chapter. Then in the Satya Yuga, the lotus-eyed Supreme Personality of Godhead, being pleased, showed himself to that Kardama Muni and displayed his transcendental form, which can be understood only through the Vedas. So it's a very different thing. Where there's understanding of the transcendental form of the Lord can choose to show his form, as was the case with Kardama Muni. So Kardama Muni, he'd actually practiced mystic yoga meditation for 10,000 years to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the cause of this effect of having the Lord show his transcendental blissful form is that his effort was mixed with the process of devotion, because we hear he did it by meditation. So the cause for the devotee of seeing the Lord is his surrendering to the lotus feet of the Lord, and so using the direct method of Krishna consciousness. So that's how it is that the Lord comes to show his form, even in the case of somebody who externally is just understood to be practicing the process of meditation for 10,000 years. It's actually combined with the process of devotion. He's actually in Krishna consciousness. So one acts in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord, and hearing about his activities, chanting his glories. And Kardama Muni engaged himself for 10,000 years in performing different types of devotional service. And he attained perfection in meditation, and this is the description. This is 3rd Canto, 21st chapter. During this period of penance, the sage Kardama Muni, by worship through devotional service in trance, propitiated the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to him for protection. So, externally it might just appear that Kardama Muni is doing a process of meditation, but actually it's combined with hearing, chanting, remembering the Supreme Lord. So it's actually in a Krishna conscious form that the meditation is taking place. Now, the most puzzling effect, the Lord gives liberation to the demons and prema to the devotees. And indeed, you could say it's the devotee's prayer. I pray that I may have bhakti, the creeper which gives the 4 fruits of endeavor, culminating in liberation, and which also gives the bliss of realization. So this is a prayer that the devotee has, and it's from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the first chapter, first section, 32nd verse. This is Srila Rupa Goswami saying. So I'm just going to read that again because this is the devotee's prayer. I pray that I may have bhakti, the creeper which gives the 4 fruits of endeavor, culminating in liberation, and which also gives the bliss of realization. So it's a prayer of a devotee. So interestingly enough, bhakti causes total disregard for liberation. So, we're hearing, there's a prayer for liberation, but also bhakti causes a disregard for liberation. So when even a little attraction for the Lord grows in the heart, the 4 objects of human attainment, artha, dharma, karma, and moksha, become the grass, like grass, shameful to appear before bhakti. This is the explanation of Srila Rupa Goswami. So liberation is in fact easily attained by jnana, cultivation of knowledge, and enjoyments, karma, easily attained by punya, pious credits, such as sacrifice, which we heard in the beginning, after attaining dedication to those goals by thousands of attempts. So this is the explanation given by Srila Rupa Goswami. However, bhava bhakti to the Lord cannot be attained if one practices thousands of different sadhanas. So this is very interesting now. So Srila Jiva Goswami comments that it is stated in many places that bhakti is easily attained. So here's one of those places. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and who are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, manifest in their hearts within a short time. So that's the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th chapter. So it may appear that there's a contradiction based on the meaning of sadhana. But there's another meaning of sadhana. It's practicing various sadhanas other than bhakti, such as karmas, trying to find some means of enjoyment with their respective goals. So bhava, as the effect, cannot be attained without attachment. Attachment is that cause, meaning attachment to Lord Krishna. Attachment to Lord Krishna is that cause, as is skillful execution. So when one's engaged in bhakti, one's also performing everything very skillfully. Now, the effect of attachment cannot exist where there is attraction for Svarga, the higher planetary systems, or even skillfulness cannot exist in that condition. So it means if the mind is diverted to still having attraction for the heavenly planets while one is cultivating one's bhakti, even skillfulness will not be present as one's trying to execute bhakti. Because the person will follow many types of sadhana. So it means that there'll be practices that are still connected to that attraction for the heavenly planets. So if one is doing this along with bhakti, it isn't actually desirable. Therefore, the proper effect is achieved in the following way. And this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 1st canto, the 2nd chapter, and the 14th verse. With one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. So that's actually the means or the manner in which one should be executing one's bhakti. So the puzzling effect that the devotees and the demons achieve the same results is that Lord Krishna is the bestower of 5 kinds of liberation, of which Sahuja, Mukti, or the liberation of becoming one with the Supreme, was given to demons. For example, even Kamsa achieved that. But on the other hand, if one looks at very intimate devotees of the Supreme Lord, such as the gopis, they were given the chance to associate with the Lord. So there's the little difference that's happening. Little difference, but difference. So even though you can say the same result is achieved because there's Lord Krishna giving liberation, but both the gopis and the demons, you could say, were liberated, but because the gopis were friends and the demons were enemies, the gopis were protected. So they were allowed to have personal association, so continuing their relationship with the Supreme Lord, whereas the demons were killed. So that's the fundamental difference. So this was an attempt to look a little bit more closely at this verse. If there's something to expand the discussion, or if something wasn't clear, or another thought has risen in connection to what was said, please feel free.
One thought on the whole subject of the discussion of liberation came out, the other day also in terms of Vasudeva, sort of, in one sense, appearing to be hankering for liberation. And in this case, the discussion that actually, the point that Narada Muni was making, that what to speak of the liberation for the devotees, the liberation, even the demons get liberation. So one thought is that appears also, the way I understanding is that the conception of liberation from the devotee perspective is different than the conception, the general conception of liberation that is there in the material society, the Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. The liberation of the devotee is the conception is very different, and the liberation of the devotee is not devoid of the association, the constant association with Krishna. So the heart of Vasudeva, a devotee like Vasudeva, is lamenting about not necessarily being free from the condition that made hamper that constant association, very close association with Krishna. That's a thought that I have. And sometimes you see, for example, Lord Chaitanya in Shikshastaka number 4, that he say that the devotee is not hankering from any type of material thing, including liberation. What he wants is birth after birth to be engaged in the service of the Lord. So that's the concept of liberation for the devotees, that is always in association serving the Lord, in association with the Lord in a mood of service. And a liberation that doesn't allow that is not liberation at all, is actually equal to hell. That's what Prabhupada Saraswati, is it Prabhupada Saraswati that says that, I think, yeah. So that's one thought to add to the discussion.
Oh, thank you very much for highlighting the difference in the concepts held by, I guess, general society of how one comes to the point of liberation. So it's, I guess, liberation from the sufferings that take place in the material world, and pointing out that the devotee's concept that the devotee has of liberation is one of continued service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, life after life. So, yeah, it's certainly the concept has built within it the whole component of relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, direct association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the continued association in relationship with in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the point you brought up of Vasudev having that concern that he actually had been treating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as his son, so maybe he was more attached to the idea of having a son, this is his son, so holding that concept as opposed to thinking of the proper concept that actually he's serving Lord Krishna, and that was a point that was, you pointed out, discussed the other day. I think Shri Balaba had brought up the question, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, there is just thinking further on that, that concept of liberation, this whole, the four arthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, including Moksha, have to do, although you become free, you become liberated from material suffering, is you don't become liberated from the personal, for us, selfishness. There is certain self-centered motivation that is there. I want to be free, or like the idea of me becoming peaceful and free from material suffering still have that component. So it may free you from material suffering, liberate you from material entanglement, but it doesn't liberate you from the self-centered position. You have to go further. That's why the position of Brahmabhuta, of liberation, is the beginning, is the entrance to bhakti. What is it? Brahmabhuta prasanam manasuchidina. Sabha sarveshu bhuteshu nat bhaktin labate param. So bhakti starts real, bhakti can start there if it's properly connected with a devotee. But what I'm saying is that liberation doesn't freeze you automatically. You need to get to bhakti to be fully liberated from the condition of being self-centered and rather Krishna-centered.
Yes, and that point was sort of examined, that if one were even performing bhakti but with the other kinds of the term that was used, practicing sadhanas of other kinds, so you are actually performing other sacrifices. I've come across persons who do that. They're performing bhakti, but then sacrifices will be done to a particular demigod in order to achieve a particular material pleasure or goal of some kind. So, so that particular way of functioning is not conducive to cultivating bhakti or even moving towards liberation, so to speak, because the mixture is not allowing for the proper development of the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because there's still that aspiration of what you've pointed out, the selfish component of further enjoyment or greater enjoyment for oneself. So it's kind of, what would be the word? It's like two different goals, and it's not possible to actually synchronize them properly. So,
yeah, that's a last comment, that liberation, that type of impersonal liberation, although is up there, is liberation from material existence, at the end you fall down again. Mm-hmm. You come back. Adho, what is it? Patantyado nadrita. How's it go? Yes. So you fall down again, even from that position of liberation. So, but there is one of the puzzling things, since you brought, that was the beginning of your class, then you have the case of Putana, who actually she did not obtain impersonal liberation. She obtained a position of being one of the nurse of Krishna, the assistants of Mother Yasoda, or a nurse of Krishna. So she did surpass, the position of impersonal liberation.
Yes. Yes, in that case, there was a moment of actually serving Lord Krishna and, genuinely thinking, what a beautiful child. So that moment, I guess, permitted that. Yeah, so it requires the genuine focus of serving. That's the proper cultivation of devotion. If there's nothing else, thank you very, very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.